I call to order the meeting of the City of Davis, Davis Joint Unified School District 2x2. And so for roll call, we have trustees Cecilia Greenwald.
Present.
I myself am present, and Bapu here, and Donna Neville.
Here.
Along with city staff. At this time, the meeting is open to public comment. Members of the public may address on matters which are not listed in this agenda. I see no public comment. Therefore, I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of March 20th, 2024, our last meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Justin.
And I vote aye as well, so that's 3 in favor, 1 abstention. Next, we have city and district communications. Is there anyone wishing to make announcements or communications? Cecilia?
Yeah. I'm going to make this, I guess, just comment because it involves district and the city. And I know we will be talking about it at our meeting as well. So I've talked to some parents who reached out to me. They're just concerned about the safe routes to schools. And at first I was thinking, well, what do you mean safe routes? Like, you know, we're safe in Davis. But actually they were concerned about the brush, branches, leaves, and so forth on the bike trails that students take to school, whether it be elementary school, middle school, or high school. There have been some kids that have had, accidents. And so they just want to bring it to our attention and make sure we're aware of it in hopes that the district and the city can work cooperatively in making sure that bike routes are safe for students and that we continue to encourage students to ride their bikes to school as well as use public transportation, the bus system to get to school. That's all. Thank you.
And I'll do a quick update from the district staff side. Trustee Jackson, we welcomed back 8,250 students a couple of 3 weeks ago. It was the start of our 4th week. I think it's been our most normal start since the pandemic. Lots of smiling faces and the normal sorts of challenges that you would expect bringing that number of students back. We opened lots of new facilities again this fall, and lots of happy parents, students, and staff. So grateful for all the work they did at Kids School Launched.
Can you repeat that number again?
8,250.
8250.
Thank you. Speaking in my behalf, I agree. It's been feeling more and more normal as a school district coming out of the pandemic. I also wanted to speak out for Measure T, which is a county-initiated parcel tax, if you will. It's actually a CFD assessment in favor of library services and to support the operations of a library in South Davis. The Davis School Board, as a board, endorsed it at their last meeting because we felt like, there was a relationship between the county libraries and the school district. They serve the same boundary areas, and of course we have a similar mission. And so for anyone present who would like to learn more about Measure T, I'm open to chatting about it outside of the meeting. And that's it for me. And so, any city staff announcements?
I'll certainly defer to Councilmember Neville and Vice Mayor Vitla for any comments that they may have, but just from a few highlights from some of our announcements at our council meeting last night. One is we have coming up fairly quickly in October is Davis Neighbors Night Out. And so we have information on our main city webpage with a link to that, where more information is available. We're really encouraging neighborhoods to sign up. Last year we had upwards, I think, of 150 neighborhood gatherings on that date, which is just phenomenal. Really great opportunity for neighborhoods to get together. It's scheduled for Sunday, October 13th this year. So for those listening and for all of those here, we encourage neighbors to get together and to sort of put in a request to host. It kind of takes a lead neighbor or two to get that wheel in motion. And the city has resources and swag and things that we can help provide, as well as make sure that we have it up the neighborhood gatherings on our list so that we can send some of our city resources and representatives out to those gatherings to make contact and to just get to know folks. So as folks may know, Neighbors Night Out is based on a national model that happens but typically earlier in the year, but we do ours at a special time of year so that we can make sure that we're inclusive of the UC Davis student population and making sure that they're in town and engaged, especially as they're moving into neighborhoods and becoming neighbors themselves. So we have that happening. And then also we have in our downtown today, you probably saw quite a bit of student activity, speaking of UC Davis and coming back into session. So today was the first of 2 days hosted by the DDBA, Davis Downtown Association, and the university to welcome and invite the students into our downtown to get familiar with our downtown and the services and the shops and the stores and the restaurants and all the amenities that our downtown offers within such an easy walk of campus. So the second day of the 2 days is happening on Sunday. So it's wonderful to see all that activity happening downtown. And we welcome the UC Davis students back as they start their school year next Monday, I think is when classes officially start. So that's in the works. And then lastly, I'll wait till we get down to some of our capital improvement updates for the other updates that I have. But those are a couple items that were on my mind. I'll turn to the council members to see if they may have some additions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's move to discussion items. We have A, facilities, capital improvement, projects update, TGOC.
We've got lots of construction continuing to happen. We opened our new STEM building at Davis Senior High School. It's amazing. If you'd like a tour, happy to take you over there. One of the many new projects at Davis. It's beautiful. Students just been raving about it. It's got a beautiful collaborative space in the middle where students are enjoying lunch and passing periods together. Our aquatics center is well underway. Broke ground right the day after school ended, and it currently has its first round of shotcrete in. The holes dug, and they've got all the internal plumbing is complete. We're on target for a fall opening, fall of 2025. We're hoping late summer and less early fall, but should be somewhere in that window. We're also constructing 10 early childhood education classrooms. These, at 5 of our elementary schools, these will allow us to move to an all-day kindergarten in the fall of next year at all of our campuses, which we think is going to be a significant improvement in our early education program for students and families of our youngest learners. Those projects should be done late this spring. We'll be moving staff in over the summer. You probably heard some buzz around town about our strategic fencing projects. We did outreach at 3 schools over the course of last year: Willett, North Davis, and Davis Senior High School. The board approved 2 fencing projects, one at North and one at Willett, to be constructed in the coming months. We put a pin in Davis Senior High School simply because there's so much construction happening there. We didn't want to do a fencing project in the midst of already a lot of construction fencing existing on campus. And we had a bit of a waylay with our solar projects all over town. The contractor went out of business in March of last year, and we've been sort of caught up in court since then, trying to get a new contractor assigned. And we've got our new contractor on board, should be starting work this week to get those solar projects complete and get the last of our campus projects done over the course of this next year. And that's all for me on construction.
Stenley building looks beautiful, by the way. It's really nice. So we have Ryan Chapman, our Deputy Director for Public Works Engineering and Transportation here, who will provide a brief update on some of the city capital improvement projects, and then he'll also join us for the Anderson Corridor update next on the agenda. Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you. So I've got two projects that I did want to highlight. The first one is repaving of 14th Street between F and Oak, which is scheduled to occur next summer. Project will install, well, first of all, repave the street, and then we'll add buffered bike lanes and intersection improvements at both F and 14th and Oak to accommodate pedestrian and bicycle traffic. The other project is repaving a path in West Davis. Now, the path starts at essentially Royal Park Patwin and heads north to Glacier Boulevard. This is a project that will be starting soon, and we are working with the school on detour plans and staged traffic control to try to minimize the impacts to students that are using the trails to get to class. And we expect that to be under construction in the next few weeks and hopefully closed out relatively quickly.
Excuse me, did you say 14th between F and Oak?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be in front of the high school.
Yeah, high school and North Davis Elementary.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and these two projects, how will that impact traffic and bicycle flow, pedestrian flow, while they're being constructed?
There will be detours as we need to close the trail for the one that's going to affect Patwin. And we will be detouring these students onto residential streets and getting them back to the actual trail as soon as possible. Essentially staging the construction in thirds to keep the trail as accessible as possible.
Okay, thank you.
For the work on 14th, we're scheduling it over the summer to try to minimize impacts to classes.
Thank you.
And then the Patwin path is scheduled for soon?
So we have a contractor on board and we're working through the initial submittals to get them started.
So we go ahead.
Thank you. So Ryan, thank you for that, and I think you probably know I'm very excited about the work that's going to be done on 14th Street between F and Oak, and especially the bike paths at F, the bike path at F and 14th, which is going to be a really important improvement. So I just want to say I'm really excited about that going forward. It's going to be great. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm just tired of thanking Ryan, so I'm just not going to have any comments. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome.
Indeed, thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to add from the city side, and this is not a specific project, but it's a preview of coming attractions, which is that thanks to Ryan's persistence and very hard work, so I will thank him. And for his hard work on this, the city is a proud recipient of a federal grant to the tune of $24 million to do what's referred to as cool paving projects throughout the city. So that plan will take place in improvements associated with that grant. That grant will take place over the course of a couple of years. And as we get closer to having a mapping of what streets and what pathways and so forth are going to be part of that, and when we'll be, of course, communicating with the districts and working with your team as our team. Our teams always work well together on this, I think, to minimize and if not all out avoid, impacts to schools during the school year, and to at least try to minimize those impacts. I'm sure there will be several street segments that are in the areas in vicinity of schools that will be part of that package. But so again, not talking about specifics just yet, but we are very proud to be able to announce that additional funding that's coming our way for helping our roads.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you.
Does the So the paving project on 14th, is that part of the cool paving? Or is that something else?
That one's not part of the pool pavement project. That was funded at least partially by grant from SACOG that we received a few years ago.
Shall we move on to the next agenda item? Anderson Corridor update.
Yeah, we're happy to jump in on that, Ryan. I think that's a bit of information you can share, at least to give a brief update on it, and then we can turn to Matt and see if you have anything you want to add. So, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so we are getting close to a 30% design. And we're working through a couple things. The first one is we need to meet with the teachers and discuss some of the impacts about parking and some of the solutions to address them, to come up with something that's going to work for everyone. And after that, we'll be going out to a public meeting, probably December of this year, to kind of talk to the community about some of our options moving forward. And this would be Anderson from Sunset North to Villanova. Includes intersection improvements at Rutgers and Villanova. Again, protected intersections and additional crosswalks and other treatments to move pedestrians and bikes through the intersection safely.
Thank you for that, Ryan. I just wanted to clarify something, because I know at one point there was discussion about that short segment on 14th, or what is actually Villanova, between Oak and Anderson, about doing something with the median so that it was wider. Is that no longer a part of either project?
Correct, that's not part of either project. The 14th project included repaving that stretch, but not modifying the median as part of the prior iteration, but the project needs to be phased due to funding constraints.
So it was in the plans, and now we're, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Representative Baker?
Let me just thank you again, but also, as a bike rider, I've noticed that Anderson intersection is being particularly a little bit dangerous and sketchy, so I'm glad we're working on it.
Trustee Ringo? Any comments from the DGOC?
No, I'm glad we're continuing to work together. We know that especially the Chavez drop-off is really, it's tough. So part of our side of the project, I've got the same architect working on, and engineers working on both sides of the sidewalk. And on the Chavez side, it would include an entire drop-off, the creation of a drop-off lane on the interior of the campus parking lot. So that'd be a big improvement.
Thank you. Shall we move on then to DGOC enrollment boundary update?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to provide an update to you all. The 2 meetings in October for our board are going to be almost exclusively focused on 2 study sessions, the first of which focusing on information about our district's boundaries and the enrollment within those boundaries and of the schools within those boundaries. And also our academic programs, or how it's structured, the assumptions that underlie the school structures, which are then in turn part of the boundary. Session 2, which is the first one scheduled for October 3rd, the second one for October 17th, will really be focused on the challenges and opportunities in the short, mid, and long term, given our enrollment trends, both projected and what's happening in real time. And then that may roll into a 3rd meeting, depending on how long it takes to get through all that. It's a lot of information to cover. And ultimately, we'll be asking trustees to provide direction to staff about what to do, whether that's more tactical moves in relation to school enrollment, or more strategic moves related to boundary shifts, et cetera. So I can imagine things that occur in the relative short term, and some that may take a little longer, given some of the things that you all know that are happening also. Village Farm, Shriners, those have the potential to have a significant impact on our school enrollment boundaries out into the sort of mid and long term. And we've got some short-term challenges that we need to address in the 12 to 24 month window. So that's coming your way and should engage a fair amount of our community, I think, in the discussion about enrollment, trends in enrollment and just how that's impacting our schools, particularly elementary schools. But as we project forward into the 3-year window, we're going to start to see that impact hit our junior highs as well.
I was thinking as you were talking, I can't remember the time we had a very significant school boundary adjustment. Maybe I'm just not following.
2008,
So it has
when
been
Valley
a
Oak was
while.
closed and
That was it.
Korematsu was open.
That was the last
The
one.
only other one we've had was when Montgomery became a magnet program entirely in 2017, and Pioneer picked up the entire South Davis boundary. Those have been the only two in the last 20 years.
Yes, Representative Bailey.
Yeah, thanks, Representative Vesti. Yeah, as you know, met with a lot of parents on the Patwood issue. The only thing, I'm glad that you're starting this process and the trustees will be discussing this. The only thing I would encourage, and I think it's the sentiment of a lot of the parents that I've met with, is that we definitely don't want to rush this process, and the trustees mentioned that the other night, but also we don't want to get too close to next year and having the same situation, which was really frustrating and heartbreaking for a lot of people, I think. I think we came up with the best solution we could, or you did come up with the best solution, and I'm grateful for that. I'm also hopeful that we can get to a place where we have a decision that resolves the questions around how enrollment well in advance of next summer. So that's my take.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. We did move our enrollment for kindergarten up about 6 weeks. So that should help us make decisions sooner. And I think the next year we'll probably move it forward ahead of winter break, which I think will help us know where kinder enrollment and TK enrollment is much earlier in the spring so that we can start having those discussions in real time. And I think part of what our board will likely be considering is, what economic or practical discomfort we may want to experience while we're having that longer term discussion. So that I think we're going to need to talk about that too.
Yeah, I guess, I'm curious about what you see as a timetable for actually making the final decision on the boundary shift, because I would assume it'd be well in advance of that enrollment period.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the scope. So if they want to focus in West Davis, that may be something shorter.
Yeah.
If they want to talk about the whole district, I think that's probably going to be something longer. And then there may be things that you do in the interim period if you choose a longer path. So it may be that they say, look, you need to keep 2 cohorts open at Patwood, regardless of the size for next year. And then we need to focus on an entire district boundary change 24 months from now or 18 months from now.
Right.
So I think that's what they're going to need to decide is scope and timing. Yeah.
From a purely self-interested perspective, it would be great to, if we could front load, we know that Patwood is the school that's kind of on the edge of a couple of those classes, so it would be great if there was a way to have a staged discussion about those district boundaries and front load the Patwood and West Davis issue.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, in my mind, we've got to have some resolution in Patwood in April.
Yeah.
Where either there's going to be boundary change or direction about how it should be for the fall. We're having those decisions in April.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you could refresh my memory too about our elementary schools, because we follow this small neighborhood school model, but not all elementary schools have the same capacity, right? There's a little bit of variation within.
Yeah, so it's interesting, as we've been preparing this presentation, I think there's lots of assumptions that will be challenged. And there's lots of values that undergird, right? You use the neighborhood school example. So between 55 and 63% of our elementary students attend their boundary school. The other 45 to 35% go to another school, maybe near where they live, but it's not necessarily in their boundary.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting reality in our district. The other part of that equation is that our schools have different capacities. Schools like Patwood are on the smaller side. The max capacity is about 450. North Davis, Chavez, Birch Lane, and Pioneer can handle around 600.
I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah, Montgomery and Korematsu are in that 450 range as well. So there's about 100 student difference. I think, when the other campuses are over 600, they're too full. So I think that I can say that pretty confidently.
Trustee Escamilla.
No, Congressman.
Yeah, I would just point out that the timeline of having these meetings in October, I think, is to try to avoid being last minute about being in a panic.
Fool me once, that's my rule.
And for context, as I understand, we came in under about 100 kindergartners than we expected.
Yeah, we are current, yes, it's about 100 students under last spring. It's about 85 when all is said and done as we started this year. There's 417 kindergartners as of this morning. And last year's kindergarten cohort was right about 500. So, and then we usually see an increase of about 50 students into first grade. We think that that has probably got some relationship to not having all-day kindergarten. So it's sometimes more convenient, economical for families to keep their students in preschool or at home and not send them to kindergarten because there's this half-day reality. So we think that's a part of the equation of why we see a jump into first grade. So we'll know more about that in the fall as we launch all-day kindergarten.
Yeah, and I was going to say, for further context, by next fall, then how many sites will have?
All 8.
We'll have
Currently, we have all-day kindergarten only at Montgomery. So all 8 will have all-day kindergarten starting in the fall.
Superintendent Best, so potentially our numbers could go up, increase when we have those open by next fall.
Yeah, I think we'll likely see some increased proportional numbers in kindergarten, I think our big question is whether that kindergarten cohort rebounds to closer to 500 or it's going to stay closer to 400.
Okay.
We expect to see some proportional increase in this next kindergarten cohort. We also are offering an before and after school program. Davis Kids Club went out of business and we essentially took over their business. So we call it Spark. We have about 500 students enrolled currently. We expect that number to grow. It's competitively priced and connected to the school in the school day. So we think those wraparound services are going to continue to be of value to families as they gain in reputational value.
Last question. So now that we're going to be offering full-day kindergarten, what's the increased state funding that we receive or you receive to do that?
So 0.
Oh, I was so hoping you weren't.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, you receive the same amount regardless of
Just the per
duration.
pupil amount.
Yeah, that's right.
Superintendent Best, did you see an expected rise of first graders over the kindergarten cohort from last year for this year's class?
Can you say that question again?
So you mentioned that you might typically see an increase of 50 first graders over maybe kindergarten from the previous year. Did you see that?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was, as of today, it was like 47, something like that. More in the first grade cohort than there were in last year's kindergarten cohort.
Thank you.
I just looked at these numbers a few hours ago, that's why they're coming off the top of my head.
Other questions and comments?
So just one last thing, but you do get additional money for the TK.
Yes.
There's really substantial amounts of money
Yeah,
going for
that's
that.
right, because the TK staffing requires 1 to 14 adult to student ratio.
And is there like a per pupil amount for TK? How's it?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so it's unique to that. So that's great, okay.
Yeah, and it requires some additional either coursework or credentialing in early childhood education for TK age students.
And since Superintendent Best mentioned the Spark after-school program, there's also subsidies for families that qualify. If there are no further comments, shall we move on to workforce housing?
Sure, you want me to start on this one? So we have quite a bit going since we met last on workforce housing. The board approved a workforce housing plan and passed a resolution in August. And this is all stemming from a survey, which I think I shared with you all, that we did of employees in the spring of last year. We had about 40% of all of our employees respond. And of that 40%, 76% of them said that they would be interested in living in workforce housing, should it have some affordability in relation to their respective salaries and family needs. So that's really driving some of our work. We just submitted an application to join the California School Boards Association cohort of 5 districts throughout the state that are exploring workforce housing together in association with UCLA's City Lab staff. And we're hopeful to get into that. We've got some good connections and have done some good groundwork in preparation. But all that being said, I think we're going to continue to explore workforce housing development options, whether that be purchase or construction or partnership here in the coming year, to try to meet the needs of more and more of our staff who are struggling more and more to live in the place where they work.
Thank you, Matt. And we have had very good, consistent meetings and communication with the city and the school district staff and Matt's team regarding identification of what are those housing types, sizes, price points that are going to be helpful to the district, not only in terms of attraction for workforce housing, but for enrollment purposes. And so that we could use that information ideally to help shape and influence policy development around housing development proposals in the city, and help inform ultimately the city council, and in some cases ultimately the voters, on some of these project proposals, about how the housing that's being proposed may influence that ability for teachers and staff and so forth to potentially have a greater likelihood of being residing in town, but also importantly, as per the last agenda item, how to positively influence enrollment for the district. So those discussions and analyses are ongoing. We've actually just been having some discussions earlier today around it. So we're hopeful to have some intel that would help moving forward. Projects that are in the pipeline, of course, there are myriad different projects in various stages of development in the city that you see under construction. Many of those are more multifamily housing-based projects. There are also several projects that are in review that are, I'll say, a bit more sizable in scale by data standards, that are in various stages of review. That includes projects like Palomino Place, which we currently have the draft EIR out for public review right now for circulation. That project will not be going to the voters, and so that's under builder's remedy. That project, presumably will be moving forward after the environmental review is complete. 2 projects that would be subject to Measure J voter requirements, of course, are Village Farms and Shriners. And those would be going to the voters presumably in 2025 and 2026 respectively. Those 3 projects alone total more than 3,200 dwelling units. But all the projects represent opportunities and potential price points and housing types and densities and such that may be, help contribute, to the workforce housing and certainly to the enrollment, components of what we're talking about here. So, but we all know also that that's not going to be sufficient for all the needs moving forward. And so to that end, the city is working diligently on embarking on a general plan update. And that's really the next big undertaking for the community at large. And that will very much involve the school district in discussions of needs and vision of, what are we looking to be as a community moving forward? What are the needs for housing amongst other uses and infrastructure needs and so forth that will help shape the general plan update. Per city council direction, we are in the process right now of working out a contract with a general plan consultant firm to help us navigate through that general plan update process. And we expect, hopefully next month, to be coming back to the city council with a recommendation to approve a contract to move forward and to get the process underway in earnest. And the council, I think, is very much committed to not only making sure it's a thorough process, but it's an expeditious one that can get done in the grand scheme of general plan updates, relatively quickly. So in a matter of a couple of years as opposed to, 8 or 10 years. So, which unfortunately they can often take that long if you let them. So those are some of the key things that are underway right now. A number of infill projects, as I mentioned, also that are in the works. Since the approval of the city council adoption of the downtown plan, for example, we have 4 mixed-use projects, vertical mixed-use projects that are in various stages of review and development, including things like the lumber yard, where Hibbert Lumber was, the site of the former Davis East Houseware site. Both of those projects are approved and awaiting the applicant, developer team to go through the building permit process. Those represent several hundred units. In those cases, it's multifamily apartment housing over commercial space. And then there's also a smaller project on D Street, which is also apartments, and just more recently a proposal on 3rd Street, on the north side of 3rd Street, that basically is the entire block. If you're familiar with where Cafe Bernardo is, it's the block across the street from that. There's a proposal on that block for a 5-story mixed-use project there as well. So over the next couple of years, we're going to start seeing a real intensification downtown infill projects, in this case multifamily. And it will certainly be interesting to see to what extent those types of projects influence school district enrollment and staff housing opportunities, to what extent that occurs. But a lot of activity in the works, that's for sure. To summarize, we are also working on what we call a housing dashboard, which Councilmember Neville has been something very dear to her, in terms of especially, but also the rest of the council, of course, so that we're creating a website where, with a very easy glance, color coding and so forth, you can see what housing projects are in the works and where, and be able to click on it and go into more depth on any given project, and just make it very, very easy to navigate and understand. There's just a lot of things that are in the works in various stages. So we're going to try to make it easy on folks to be able to digest all of that. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Just a couple, so thank you for that. So Matt, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is something that I think maybe this group was slightly differently composed about a year ago. We talked about how some school districts throughout California were actually using Prop 39 bonds to then build actual workforce housing for teachers. And then, I'm not sure if I followed it closely enough, but it seems like that's sort of shifted away and now they're using GO bonds. So I was curious, was there a challenge to using the Prop 39 for teacher work?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
That's okay, yeah.
It seems like most are shifting to GO bonds though, or financing their CFDs or something, some mechanism like that.
And then, of course, there's a measure on the ballot which would broaden the 55% majority vote for infrastructure. So it would kind of address that question anyway. So I was just curious about that.
The number of folks actually doing something is relatively small with kind of mixed results. So that's why we're really interested in joining the CSBA cohort, visiting places that have constructed some things in the relative short term, and some have had workforce housing options for decades. So there's a good variety out there, but it's still a very small fraction of the state's districts.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Bailey?
No.
No. Trustee Messina? Mr. Webb, you mentioned at least two Measure J projects, so Village Farms, and then what was the other one?
Shriners.
Sure.
Yes. And then Village Farms tentatively slated for what would potentially be a 2025 ballot measure, and Shriners in 2026. And Matt and I have been in communication about the timing of those and what does that mean in terms of actual construction of the units and, you know, people moving in and so forth. And so having to think, obviously the school district needs to be thinking years ahead of what to expect. And so, you know, it's, once a project goes onto the ballot, if approved, then it's typically 18 months minimum until you're starting to see a project go vertical. And then it's phased in usually over the course of a couple of years after that. So, for example, we're seeing Brent Woods now under construction, models opening, right? And they broke ground about 18 months ago. So, yeah.
And can you remind me, where's the Palomino project?
Yeah, Palomino is also known as the Wild Horse Ranch, north side of Covell, very eastern edge of Wild Horse, about 25-acre site that's previously a horse ranch property. Yeah. And that's Dave Terramino's housing proposal there. It's, I think it's about 240 units.
And Superintendent Best, just to remind everyone here, I mean, we've referenced, I think, some school districts around the state that have had workforce housing project. Could you mention two or three that might be representatives?
Yeah, so in the not so far perimeter, there's really none in the Sacramento Valley area. I think the nearest one is in San Mateo. It's the Jefferson High School, Jefferson High Unified District, built, I think, 107 units in San Mateo for staff. Santa Clara Unified built an apartment complex called Casa Maestra. That's, I think, got a couple hundred units, 250, and it's been done in two phases, and they've been in operation for 15 years, I think, something like that. Those are kind of the two closest one. There's a fair number in the greater Bay Area, and then in Southern California, LA Unified and San Diego are the kind of two biggest entities doing this work.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? So we move on to agenda item number 6, announcement and comments, and I'm recognizing I may have gone out of order on that, but speaking for myself and talking about Measure T. I, however, leave it open to others on 2 by 2 to offer any other comments, announcements. I think I would just add that it seems somewhat relevant, but for tomorrow's school board meeting, we have as an agenda item developer fees discussion, and I'm sure you must know that.
Yeah, Matt and I have definitely been in communication about that. Have some familiarity.
Understood. All right. If there are no further announcements or comments, the next scheduled meeting is November 20th, 2024, and the meeting is adjourned at 5:46. Thank you very much.
Thank you.